Hey, everybody, welcome to episode 21 of Hardpoints, the podcast about energy security and the startup economy, and of course, how they intersect to shape the world around us. Each week, as usual, we'll unpack the real dynamics behind the headlines, what's changing, what it means, and why it matters to you. Thanks for being here. Neil, it's good to see you, man.
Yeah, good to see you. We've had a little break, so good to be back at it.
Yeah,
What's
I was
happening?
traveling. I was traveling, man. I was down in. I was actually not too far from you, but I knew you were too busy to even like schedule a meeting. I flew into John Wayne on Monday and flew out on Wednesday. So
Oh,
they're in Orange County.
our weather wasn't the perfect everyday sunny blue skies and 72 then. That was like the 3 days of this year that it's not been perfect.
I brought maybe I brought it with you. To brought it to you, I should say.
So what were you doing here? What was the purpose?
I had a sales conference that I was at. So just meeting with all sorts of different people in the industry. I also got to speak, which is always something I enjoy. I like teaching just broadly. I come from a family of teachers. When I was in the Nav, as a flight instructor, I really enjoyed teaching that. And so being able, speaking on stage, being able to educate people about things that you care about and you know about, like that's just always something that I enjoy. I don't know if that's always a good time for other people. Some people are real nervous about it, but for me, I enjoyed it.
Good. I mean, speaking of that, I was just with my mentee who was speaking on stage to, I don't know, a couple hundred people, and it took me back to when public speaking was new to me. Just him working through the nerves and like memorizing what he was going to say over and over and over again. I don't do that anymore, but it reminds me that it's a learned skill. It's something you get comfortable with over time. He's 16. He's never done it before, but yeah, I appreciate what you're saying. To me, it's fun. It's an opportunity. For him, it was just terrifying.
Oh yeah, no. The first few times that you do that, like as a young adult, like you're lot of fear about it. Matter of fact, my daughter just went to this. They have this little um, local thing here in the Denver area that they call Young Ameritown, where they go and like they all get to play roles as grown-ups, but it's kind of to teach them about free enterprise and the exchange of goods and services and capital and all that. And so, in part of that, one of the students had to run for mayor, and my daughter, who'd been very nervous about public speaking and like to the point that like she has no problem at her piano recital, like playing any of the pieces, no nerves about that, but just saying, my name is Ellen Smith and I'm going to play this, like makes her quiver, or at least it used to. And so I was like super proud when she was like, well, this guy's going to run for mayor and this guy. And I was like, well, what about you? Why don't you run? And she's thought about it for a second. And she's like, yeah, okay. So she did. She prepped her speech. I know she was nervous about it, but like, it's just something you gotta, as growing up, you got to get over, and you got to learn how to talk in front of a crowd. At least if you've got anything worth saying, and if you don't, then find a way to find the right things to say.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, gets
So
easier over time.
yeah, how's fundraising going for you? I mean, like last time we talked, you had all the big pieces in play. Now I'd imagine it's
Yeah,
just a lot of chasing people and paperwork around.
yeah. I am exhausted. I am chasing signatures. It's just a matter of getting the document signed. But that in itself is a big effort, and we're also like in the process of putting together a package for a grant and some other stuff. So it's all going to come together in the next 2 weeks, and I think then I'll be able to take a breath. But yeah, no, the fundraise. Thank you for asking. The lead coming through was huge. It's One Small Planet. Tip of the cap to them because they stepped up and took on a bunch of work in a very short period of time, and really appreciate my partners there, Jack in particular. Shout out to them if they're listening. I just say it's just a ton of work. I had so many conversations. I'm still having conversations. I actually did 3 brand new pitches this week. You just sort of like just never stop. What's interesting about that is that, investors sort of like to pile on at the end once the round is de-risked. So I'm okay with that. Like I'll entertain all comers, and I'm not, I don't have to think too much about the pitch anymore. I've done it probably 200 times at this stage. But yeah, we just need to get the docs signed and we'll be all good.
That's good. Yeah, I didn't realize you were working with the guys at One Small Planet. So that's kind of
Oh,
exciting. I
nice.
met
Oh
Jack.
yeah.
Yeah, I
One of
met
them.
Jack a few years ago.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That's Jack. And then I guess one of his guys or his main guy is in Denver there. Right. So I guess I should have drawn that connection or
Uh,
somewhere in Colorado anyway.
yeah, he sure is. I've never actually. Will is I think the guy that's here, and yeah, I haven't
Yeah.
crossed his path. At least
Okay.
not that I remember. So
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
he and I either don't run in the same circles, or he keeps a much lower profile than I would have imagined. So
Maybe. Yeah. But
yeah,
they do.
so
I
there's a
mean, you
little bit of
just
that.
look at their website, you can see they're just good people trying to do good work. So shit,
Yeah. Well, next time you talk to Jack, say hey to him for me, would you?
I will. I probably talk to him later today. So I will.
Okay. Well then, Jack, you'll be hearing this after you've heard from Neal.
Yeah.
So big things going on in the news. You know, like we had a political assassination the other day. What do you think about that?
Yeah, man, it's so sad. I think it it is a marker of the times. You know, we live in a society where there's just so much vitriol on both sides. And, it's shocking. I mean, I'll start with this. Political violence is never the answer. Violence is never the answer. I love the quote from Charlie Kirk, actually, that has been floating around that says, when talking stops, that's when violence begins. I think that's the most, like, of all the stuff that's been circulating, that's the one quote that I hope just keeps getting circulated, because that part of what he said is just so spot on. But also, let me be clear. I disagree with just so much of what he had to say, the direction he was trying to push the country. And I think people right now are trying to position him as this like fair debater. He just wanted to go on college campuses and he had this tour called Prove Me Wrong. But I don't buy for a second that was a fair debate. Those
Nah,
were
it'd be like LeBron going and playing a pickup game in the park, right? Like that's what it was.
totally,
Is like this is a guy that spends 10 years, doing nothing but arguing and engaging in sleights of hand, rhetorically, and
I
then he
mean,
goes and he picks on like 18-year-olds that are passionate about things. Come on.
yeah, right. And he's an activist, though. I mean, I think that's okay too. He can be an activist. He can say
Oh,
whatever he wants.
100%. Like I think I disagreed with a lot of the things that he said, but yeah, 100%. Get on your
Yeah,
soapbox, say
totally.
what you want. I
Yeah,
mean, don't present yourself as a fair debater if you're not engaging with like an equal,
yeah,
and that you're not engaging on the points and moving these. But like you gotta, even if you're saying the biggest, like dumbest thing, like go say it. Like that's fine. Have it.
yeah,
You know,
yeah. Well, and we've said this on this podcast before, the answer to speech you don't like is more speech. It is not trying to silence that speech. And I think, too many times on university campuses, far right speakers were kicked out, kicked off, or censored, or otherwise not allowed, or, under whatever premise. It just, what I appreciate is that openness of say exactly what you just said. Say whatever it is you want to say. The answer to that is more speech. But what I push back against is like people now trying to characterize him as he was just having an open, honest conversation with people. I reject that. You got to call him what he was. He was an activist, and there's no world in which he should have been shot. I'll also say from a personal perspective that, look, for worse, usually the phrase is like for better and worse. In this case, it's just the worst. I've seen a lot of people get shot, and there was some weird, like, personal reaction there that was just like, took me right back to that. Like, I don't know, when I was in Iraq and seeing all that stuff, like you put up some sort of like mental callousness, I guess it is. I'm just like, the phrase that went through my head was like, yeah, that motherfucker got shot. Like, I don't know why it came out that way or what it was to me. But the reason I'm saying it now is like, yeah, dude got shot, is like, it then in the next moment took me back to, I don't want war here at home in America. I don't want the rest of the country to have that callousness. It's also why I don't want assault weapons on U.S. streets. We do not want this here. Um,
Yeah. You ever? I'm sure you watched it. You're a Marine. I mean, like, I think it's probably mandatory watching to watch Full Metal Jacket.
oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and so like when the gunnery sergeant in training is saying it's the hard heart that kills,
Yeah.
and you kind of gloss over it as like some sort of kind of hard saying, but that's the reality of it, which is that like it's easy to teach somebody to pull a trigger. Like that shot was not a particularly technical shot. Anybody with a little bit of training and the right optics and the right weapon could make that shot. It's the hatred, it's the hard heart that killed. And the hardening of all of our hearts uh doesn't make us better. It doesn't make us better. It's and so I'm going to use a little bit of my free speech here, which is to say that anybody that is advocating for civil war is an asshole. Like you're just like you haven't really internalized like how fucking awful this is for everybody, you included. And anybody that's talking from a position of sanctimony about how it's this side versus that side, fuck you. Like you are not internalizing what sort of evil you're trying to justify being brought to the world.
Yeah. That I 100%. That's what I'm saying is essentially, we don't want that here. We want a part of what makes us proud Americans is the First Amendment, that we've been able to, for almost 250 years, been able to peacefully transfer power, disagree vehemently, and only on the fringes have violence. We went through the Civil War, of course, but outside of that, we've essentially been able to vigorously defend the First Amendment, even when you totally disagree and think that the other side is wrong-headed, harmful. But what's happening now is a callousness on both sides. I mentioned before, the university is trying to squash the right-wingers that they didn't like. That is awful and wrong. And it's also awful and wrong to see the kind of squashing now from the right going right back onto the left. It's just, like, guys, I'll bring it back to like the Constitution was our agreement, like how we're going to resolve our differences. It is why I swore an oath not to uphold any one government, but the Constitution. I know, like, you did the same. It's just like that is the document that governs our interactions.
There is there's a prevailing sense right now. I think a lot of the rules apply to other people, and on my side, if you will, then the means are what we need in order to move this forward. And so there's kind of a like the means apply to other people, but the ends apply to my side. I guess is kind of where I'm trying to go with it, and I think that's wrong. One thing that kind of has stood out in this whole conversation to me is actually how much I appreciate Governor Spencer Cox of Utah. If there's one Republican, Utah pretty much doesn't elect Democrats to national or to statewide office. He first caught my eye actually when he vetoed a trans ban in sports. It was an interesting thing because this guy, like he wrote a letter and he was like, "We're talking about 2 kids in the entire state that aren't harming anybody. They're not winning championships. Like, what are we doing here?" But he also said, "I don't want these kids that are thinking about like what their gender identity is, et cetera. I don't want them to kill themselves. And I want living kids." And like, I appreciated that. That took a little bit of, moral courage associated with that to kind of stand up to what was kind of the prevailing thing in his party. And so when that happened, and then when I've seen him actively working hard to turn down the rhetoric on all of this, um, when he said, that the shooter, who will remain unnamed here, was dealing with this from kind of a place of leftist, violence, I trusted him. Right. And it was that, like, I think it's just like it's worth highlighting here when people have a little bit of moral courage, are doing the right thing, trying to stick to their ideals. I don't think I'd vote for him. You know what I mean? But I can appreciate his service. And so, God, I wish we had more people like him.
Yeah. I agree. The only thing that he said that I was like, and it was in the moment. He'd been up all night. I'd give him some grace here, but he said something like he was hoping that that person wasn't from Utah or wasn't from this country. And it's like, that's a little like, does that, I'm not sure that's the most important thing to say here, bro. But I take your point that overall he's been tremendous. And actually, I would vote for him based on what I've seen. Other than that comment, which I thought was a little off the wall, I really liked what I saw from him being
Yeah.
in the national spotlight.
And I would agree that comment didn't resonate very well with me, but it was also like I was willing to give the guy a little bit of grace because like I think what he was trying to do was in the service of turning down the tempter. Like it would be great if we didn't have to frame this as a left versus right, bad guys versus
Yeah.
good guys in the U.S. context. That you could say it was an act of terrorism almost.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, not a great comment, but again, like because he has, I think in this world, like we really are striving for authenticity, and I think he's been pretty authentically out in the public trying to do his best.
Yeah.
And I,
That's what I would like to get back to your point about authenticity. I didn't actually think about it in those terms. Like I did too though. And I'm just saying this on the fly. Like when he said it, I was like, yeah, that checks out. He's been honest enough in just like the 30 minutes I've seen him, which is honestly, I've never seen him speak or talk about anything prior to this week. But I had the same kind of trust because you just got the sense that he was a straight shooter. So anyway, I digress. I was just sort of like, I think I had the same reaction. Like I didn't question when he said it's a leftist guy. It's not like if Trump said it was a leftist guy, I'd be like, yeah, whatever. You say whatever's in your own self-serving interest all the time. Like I'm not going to believe you, but this guy seems like a straight shooter. I'm going to believe him.
yeah, I mean, on social media, you've seen like the FBI director Kash Patel, who is an absolute ideologue and was put into the position because of his ideology. Um, the FBI released the apparently the transcripts or something similar to the transcripts of the text messages between the shooter and like his domestic partner, roommate, and some unsure of the framing. And like online is having a field day with it, including from conservative places, because nobody
Oh
believes
yeah.
him because he's not considered an honest actor.
Well,
And
I
it's
don't know
about the
why.
importance.
Yeah, but I don't know why. Because Kash Patel has like 30 years of law enforcement experience. He's been to the FBI Academy, and he's steeped in the
Oh,
tradition. Wait. Sorry, none of that's true. He has no idea what he's
no, no, he has absolutely no idea what he's doing.
doing.
But it just highlights the importance about like your, this is something that we learned in the mill, man. But like your reputation precedes you. People will trust you if you're authentic and like you're not full of shit. But once you lose credibility, you lose that trust. It is very, very hard to regain. And when you need that trust, you're not going to be able to rely upon it. Like the country is suffering because of his dishonesty.
Yeah, but
And
he
even
hasn't
before he was put
lost.
into office.
Yeah, he hasn't lost credibility in his own tribe, though. I mean, if that was ever going to happen, this is how I know the tribes are effed. Right? Is that he said for so long, we need the Epstein files. We need them. Absolutely. Deep State's got them. We're going to get them. Now look at what he says. Oh, we don't need to do that. We're like, yeah, look over there. It's a unicorn. Like zero credibility from anybody rational. But inside his tribe, it's like, it's fine. Hand wave. We're moving on.
Yeah. Well, in other news, let's talk about some stuff coming out from Reuters, specifically about the Department of Energy launching a program to accelerate power plant and transmission line buildouts to meet surging demand from AI, data centers, electric vehicles, and a bunch of other stuff. I'm
Yeah.
sure this is near and dear to your heart, Neil.
It is. I'm excited for this. I am hard on the administration, as all Americans should be, no matter your party, like call balls and strikes. I'm excited about this. I think, it follows the premise of we need to win the AI race, and therefore we need to have energy. To win AI, you need chips, algorithms, and energy. You need to win at all three of those things. We've got the number one company in the world, NVIDIA. We've got the best algorithms in a number of different companies, OpenAI, Google, Anthropic, the list goes on. But we are falling behind in energy. And I think there's two things. One is while the US is doing this, it's in the context of the Chinese just releasing their energy capacity They're gonna install basically the size of the U.S. grid in just the next decade. So they're gonna build enough capacity to basically build our whole grid in 10 years. Um, they're saying they're going to have 283 gigawatts, and this is a very specific number, just by mid 2025. That is a massive upgrade from where they were, which is why this is so important strategically. If we're going to keep up, we need stuff like this. And the biggest issue has always been projects take too long. They just do. You start a project, renewable energy or otherwise, and it's a decade sometimes. Nuclear is more than that. So if we can get out of our own way and approve projects faster, and that's what this is, this quote unquote speed power initiative is all about, I am all for it.
Yeah, I would be all about it. Like we need this sort of thing. Sometimes I think it's a taking credit for things that are already kind of happening. People are working on this in many other ways. I'm a little skeptical of the Trump administration broadly because in July they canceled the backing the loan for the interconnection. I think it was called the Grain Belt Express. So yeah, and apparently that came from Josh Hawley, the senator from Missouri that was trying to drive that. So I want to see what kind of plays out here, but at the end of the day, this is what we absolutely need. Like the American infrastructure is sagging in so many ways. We are well built for the middle of the 20th century and not built currently for the 21st. Everything that we do is kind of small. I heard, one of my favorite thinkers, which is a guy named Jonathan Foley. He's Dr. Jonathan Foley. He's the executive director of Project Drawdown. And, he was talking about one of the things on like the climate fight is about the fact that we probably need to be thinking small and nimble. And when you look at like what's been happening in the US for pretty much my entire life is we haven't done big things. Like the only big thing that we actually ever did during my entire life was invade two countries and hang out there for between 10 and 20 years. Like that's it. That's all we've done that's big. And so I've seen a lot of people that have been like cheering the fact that like California has been unable to build its high-speed rail. And like, you're not a patriot if you're doing that. Like, what are you doing? Like, we should want this country to succeed. I am.
When you say big, are you talking about infrastructure projects like the interstate system, or what do you mean?
Anything, dude. Like, I mean, like the biggest like political thing that we've done was Obamacare, which was around the edges, like funding of healthcare sort of thing. But like, and like it got pushed out essentially, as soon as the Trump 2.0 came around.
I mean, we created the internet. That's big. The iPhone. Your phone, as much bad comes to your phone, it's also a technological marvel. You've got a supercomputer in your pocket. That's pretty big.
Sure. I mean, like things have happened. Don't get me wrong. The world's moved on, but it's nothing like this country has intentionally done as a collective unit, right? The infrastructure for the internet. The infrastructure for the internet was built on actually on excess capacity within telecoms. So after the telecom boom collapsed in the at the end of the 20th century, there, beginning of the 21st, there was a lot of build out associated with fiber optic that then was made available for like relatively cheap, almost free transmission of data, and that's what kind of funded like the internet boom. But all the infrastructure of the internet that existed before that, like this was a DARPA grant back in like decades before. We haven't done anything big where my government has been involved either at the state or the federal level, other than invading two foreign countries and losing those wars.
I'm trying to. I would say one, Al Gore invented the internet, so let's start with that. Two, we built the wall that Mexico paid for. What about that?
Yeah. That's. I mean, you're making my point, right? You're making my point, right? Which is that like even people have been talking about building that goddamn wall, since I was 18. right? And I used to go and fly out of El Centro and you'd see like, yeah, it was this fucking scar across the desert. And if it was so successful in building that wall, like we wouldn't have had like what you talk about in many previous episodes, all these people coming into the United States illegally, right? So like,
Yeah,
it's
I don't know.
we're
I'm not.
chasing
I'm
we're
not accepting
chasing.
your. I'm not accepting
Okay,
your argument yet because I think you're right. We have not built the interstate system. We have not uh, done a sort of big New Deal kind of public works project. Um, however, we have. I mean, the internet has changed the universe, and that took uh, public and private big brains and regulators and um, the face of work. Like when I was growing up, my dad had a secretary, and she would come in with a paper and pen and take notes on what he wanted, on a letter he wanted to write. She'd go out on a typewriter and type it up, and then he would proof it, and she'd go out and then put it in the mail and send it with a stamp.
100%. The world has massively changed, and the internet has absolutely changed it. But we don't. I don't think we get to take a whole lot of credit for having intentionally built it.
Yeah, I think we do. All right, maybe that's the difference. Like I think that happened in America. That didn't happen in other places. It happened here. And actually, this is also like, go back about why I don't like all this anti-immigration stuff is because it happened here because all the big brains, starting from Einstein, wanted to come to America. And they came here because our university system was awesome and our innovation system was amazing. And we had private capital available and public support and a free enough regulatory framework to get good shit done. So I get you. It wasn't a big public works project, but it was here in America because we had we've attracted the talent. We've got the framework to do it. We've got the capital to do it. Make shit happen.
What years? I mean, when did that happen?
The internet was late 90s. I got my first email address in 95, I think.
Yeah, sure. So early research was done in the 60s. The development of TCP/IP was done in the 70s. The internet emerged kind of in the 80s under ARPANET. And then it was commercialized in the 90s with NSFNet being decommissioned and the internet becoming fully available in 1995. So the timeline checks out, but all the development of that was pre-95. I was 15. So like what the fuck have we done? I'm 45. What the fuck have we done in the last 30 years that I can look back and say, we did this. Everything else has been riding on the infrastructure of that since. All those universities that we talk about, that all the infrastructure of the institutions about like why people want to come here, the freedoms and the like, all of that was built, and we've been mining it and destroying it for short-term gain ever since.
Mm. Okay, you got your negative pants on. Keep going. My positive pants are on here. It's fine.
I mean, I just deeply love this country, but like we've stopped. My point is that we stopped believing that we can build big things, right? And so one of the things I actually appreciate about Elon Musk, who I disagree with on a lot of stuff, is that like he just believed he can build big things, and he went out and he did it. And you know what? That's great. He built an electric car company. People had tried to do that before. He built that, right? And I cheer him for that because he actually accelerated climate action in so many ways. He built reusable rockets, which is kind of pushed American dominance into space. But there are points where like our government needs to be able to do things. And frankly, we need to be able to clear out the ability to build transmission lines. We need to be able to build high-speed rail. And we don't. And people cheer that we can't because it wins their political argument. And so like that to me is un-American. You don't believe in this country. You're not trying to see it do great things.
So this is why I think this effort, the Speed to Power initiative, is great. This is the idea is to ease projects being built, especially in the energy sector, which is where my focus is. But the high-speed rail thing got killed because too many people pulled it in too many different directions, and somebody wanted it to go through Bakersfield when it should have just gone straight shot from LA to San Francisco, blah, 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 blah. Too much shit getting in the way. But you know what prevents most renewable projects from getting built is environmentalists. I mean, I'm an environmentalist. I get it. Like, protect the critters. But also, we got to build shit. So like, should it take me 3 years to get a permit for a solar project? I don't think so. Should it take me 6 months? Probably. But like, I think this is the speed to power initiative. I'm behind it because I think it's good for energy security. It will rebalance the permitting process in a way. I hope it will rebalance. I mean, we're at the very early stage of this. Good intentions don't always equal good outcomes, but the intention here is to smooth the path for projects to get built, all sorts. And I'm going to get flack for, being an anti-environmentalist. Like I want to protect the critters too. I want clean air, clean water. We got to have all that stuff. It just shouldn't take that long.
Sure. The number one threat to biodiversity is climate change. After that is associated with pollution from fossil fuels, and interconnect helps the development and deployment of renewables, which improves American security. All those things are correct and true, and in my opinion, the important environmental position to take.
Yeah. All right.
I'm just skeptical that this guy will do it because he just in July canceled something that was helping to build that. And so,
yeah. They also just canceled, in my world, I'm not in the horizontal axis wind turbine business, but they just canceled the project. It was 80% complete.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Like billions of dollars spent already, and they're just going to prevent it from getting finalized. Like awful, no matter, I mean, we've had in the past anyway, presidents that would, even if they disagreed with something, would just not rock the boat because it was so disruptive. This is the kind of thing that is just, I don't know how you're going to build. I mean, go back to what I said before about good shit happening because we have an environment, a business friendly environment where, innovation happens, but not if you're doing stupid stuff like this. Not if you let the private sector invest billions of dollars and then cancel it at the last minute. That is not good for business at all.
Yeah, it goes back to that thing that we started with during the earlier conversation about, like, you have to have trust. You have to have people that you believe that are doing their best in order to avoid political interference, and in order to kind of do what's in the best interest of people and the environment, and balancing all the competing things. And like ultimately in a representative, democracy, you are electing people that you're hoping of character in order to be your local expert to do these things and to put people of character into position in order to do these things from a regulatory standpoint. And, we do need to cut a lot of red tape. We need to be able to get this stuff done a lot faster. I totally will agree with that. But I've got doubts because of because of who the actors are. So I root for America. If he gets this done and this enables us to, improve our energy security and get better interconnection, which allows the deployment of renewables. All those things are good things. I root for America. I'm voting. I want this to succeed. I'm just worried about how it's going to go. So many times, like, this is really just window dressing for something else.
Yeah. Well, on that note, he has rewarded his fossil fuel buddies quite a bit so far. I'm saying I support this, knowing that there are going to be a lot of gas plants built as a result of this. I think I start with I'll bring this data that we looked at before the show, which is utilities are expecting 15 to 40% rate increases. I'm just going to read it because I want to make sure I get it right. As demand grows by over 15% by 2029 and potentially 78% by 2050. This is driven by AI data centers, manufacturing, and consuming grid capacity faster than new plants can be built. This is why kneecapping wind and solar was such an awful idea, because the fastest things to be built at the lowest cost have been wind. Without subsidy, the fastest, cheapest has been wind and solar. And so, let me also acknowledge, the big, beautiful bill kneecapped wind and solar. It actually left the rest of it kind of intact. Like geothermal's still there, batteries are, still subsidized. Nuclear is still subsidized. Um, all of that is great. That those things survived. The most visible things, which I think this is just sort of the way the Trump administration rolls, is like he wants to win the headline, so he attacks the two most visible things. In this case, I can say in the same breath, I fully support the energy dominance agenda, and I also what you just did by kneecapping wind and solar does not achieve the stated objective.
Yep, that's right. It's worth kind of one true anecdote to kind of illustrate about like how this demand is going up there was a pretty big announcement from Meta about how they were going to be building a new data center in Louisiana. Did you see this?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this new data center in Louisiana is going to be consuming twice the electricity of the city of New Orleans, double the electricity of the city of New Orleans. And in order to supply that, they're going to have to build 3 new combined cycle gas power plants in order to do that. And they're also going to be jacking up the rates for the Louisiana electric ratepayers in order to make that happen. Interconnect helps, right? If you're being able to get the cheapest electricity, that's, for example, typically the reason people are installing so much wind and solar right now is because it's so cheap in order to create this electricity, but it is intermittent, which say, as we all know, the sun doesn't always shine, the wind doesn't always blow. But it's blowing somewhere. It's almost always shining, during the day, it's always shining somewhere, even if it's cloudy where you live. And so getting that cheap electricity that's being generated somewhere else to where you live is going to help the Louisiana ratepayers, and hopefully not have to run so many gas power plants in order to drive this AI behemoth that is going to be effectively the power grid of Louisiana.
Mm. It goes to this broader point. Prices are going to go up. They're going up. They're already, I shouldn't say gonna go. It's already happening. It's just so short-sighted to try to, I know it's you can win the headline and maybe it's a good line. You can say at one of your rallies, but it just doesn't make any practical sense. And at the end of the day, if you want, Trump got elected on the border and inflation, maybe not in that order. And none of this is going to help. Like the tariffs don't help. This energy policy doesn't. Again, this new initiative may help. The speed to power initiative might help, but not kneecapping the lowest cost, fastest to build.
Yep.
Stuff out there.
Like I said, I root for America. I hope he is successful on this one. I hope also that he realizes the errors of his ways when it comes to kind of kneecapping renewable energy. If he does an about face, I'll give him a public high five. So let's see about that. Speaking of the tariffs though, and kind of on the inflation side of things, at this conference that I was at, I had a couple of people, like volunteer. Like I didn't even bring up the topic, but like it was so present on them that they would, and like I'm clearly like, as a guy that cares about climate, they've already probably pigeonholed me as a Democrat or as a liberal of some sort, right? But they would be like, I voted for Trump, but these tariffs are killing me. And it's not even necessarily the tariffs, it's the uncertainty. And you're just like this unsolicited, like, hey, they wanted to tell me about this. I was really, really surprised because like I was there in in a sales thing. Like I'm not going to be bringing up politics. I don't want to I just wanted to, they're all good people. I want to make friends and convince them that I'm a good guy and I can help them with this one particular business problem they have. So I wasn't bringing up any of that. And the fact that they unsolicited like that seems to me to be a little bit of an undercurrent that I wasn't quite expecting. So I don't know. Have you been hearing anything like that?
Yeah, it's interesting. In the startup world, we're in this magical space where real economic issues are 3 years away for a startup, for many startups anyway, seed stage, pre-seed startups. And so you sort of hand wave it'll be a new administration by the time we get into the real world. So don't worry about it so much. I think that's a bit of fantasy land. We're trying to grapple with all of it right now, in particular with steel prices, because most of our system is steel and aluminum, both of which are heavily tariffed, at least at present. I think when you get to My family, extended family and friend group. Yeah. I mean, I think I go back to the tribalism. There's nobody that's in my world that has just said, "Oh man, this is awful." But they'll say things like, "Ooh, man, it's not looking good this year." You're like, "Well, what do you mean?" Like, "Well, it'll probably turn around. It's probably fine." But like, I, at least the guys that I talk to, um, it's too. I don't know if it's cognitive dissonance or what, but it's too frontal for them. They signed up they're on the Trump train, and they're so firmly on the Trump train that any admission that things aren't going well is personally hurtful to them. Um, I try to remind myself of this sort of like, you know, what Pastor Caleb taught me, which is, it's all about meaning, belonging, and purpose. These folks found some belonging, some meaning in this Trump world, this vision of what MAGA has stood for. So I don't think it's going to happen overnight, but I do think that there's chinks in that arm. There's like, at least they know, practically speaking, ooh, yeah, I thought we weren't going to lose Medicare. I thought inflation, he was going to really focus on inflation. Has basically not been a focus of the administration at all. He's kind of gone past what I thought he was going to do on the border. I wanted some border security, but rounding up grandma, in a mask is not kind of what I signed up for. So like, I think there's chinks there, but nobody, not a single person that I talk to that is a true Trump supporter has shown any sort of like negative pants, let's just say.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me with George W. Bush. Like, that guy had like phenomenal approval ratings in his first term. A lot of it as a reaction post 9/11. And then the 2008 financial crisis, and like that was, it was kind of this slow downward decline a little bit for him, but he had kind of had like a floor that you just couldn't break through. And then the 2008 financial crisis happened, and everybody was like, okay, time to go. And, so I kind of wonder if there will be something there. Like, do we really need to have an economic collapse, before people kind of start to realize that? Like, there's some worrying signs in the economy. I'm not rooting against America. I want this all to go away. I want this to work. I would be surprised, but actually really happy if I was wrong about kind of where I'm seeing this going. And if I was wrong, I will admit it. But
you'd be the one guy who admits it.
Like I had my media sources had me wrong about like what the intentions were of the Kirk shooter. And I admitted on social media like this, and I also said I did it because I believe in Governor Cox. Right. So like, I think there are people out there that are willing to admit it. I'm not that special. I'm not special at all, actually. But what what is it gonna take for people to be like, yeah, you know what? Like they're not stupid. They know the guy's full of shit. They know he's an asshole. They know like a bunch of these things. I just hope my hope is that everybody kind of figures out what I'm seeing, and we make a course correction, or somehow like I'm shown like evidence proves me wrong quickly, and I recognize the error of my ways, at least on the economic policies. I am quite convinced on the morality of the way we're treating immigrants and the renewable energy side of things. So,
well, here's another problem though. So you may be right that you go through the laundry list and objectively be like, yep, this isn't what I signed up for. Economy's tanked or crashed or whatever. My problem there is like, what's the alternative? A lot of my several, and I don't know about a lot, a handful, just couldn't bring themselves to vote for a Democrat because they had gone too far left. So if there was an alternative, if there was an actual like sane, rational alternative, I think I'd be more hopeful that people would turn away from MAGAism into something more, I'll just call it like fundamentally American, what I consider to be fundamentally American, which is, but I don't see a lot of that. I mean, Gavin's starting to talk a good game and be more combative, which people want to see fire in the belly. I get that. I don't know. I just don't see there's no like clear Democrat alternatives.
I think there's a couple people in the younger generation of the Democrats that I'm starting to root for. And they kind of are, across the map there. So the one that I'm pretty excited about is a Democrat out of the Texas State Legislature, a guy named James Tellerico. He seems to be, speaking very clearly from a place of moral conviction without, being too particularly accusatory. Um, living Christian values that include, accepting others. So I've been pleased to see that. I think AOC has matured quite a bit, and so she's kind of brushed off some of the burrs that made her a little bit more aggressive. She may be to the left of me on a few issues, but like I think she's also starting to understand the importance of coalition building. There's a guy out of Maine named Graham Plattner who's like an oysterman, that I think is starting to speak about like the checkbook issues and the fact that like we have a system that is built to favor the wealthy and the well-connected. And like, if you're concerned about the price of eggs, like you should be, I think I would encourage people to listen to what Graham Plattner has to say. So I think that there's some of these like, there's another gal out of, I want to say Wisconsin, Mallory, I think is her name. I'm trying to remember her last name, but I would say that there's actually this new generation. And part of the problem here is that we have too many darn boomers that are still running things. Fun, like upsetting fact actually that I heard the other day. How old is Donald Trump?
79.
That's right. How old is George W. Bush?
I think George W. Bush is probably 81.
79. How
79.
old is Bill?
Okay.
How old is Bill Clinton?
Is he also 79?
Mm-hmm. We have 1 year of the boomers, with the exception of the Obama years, that have pretty much been running this my entire life. Like, again, back to the internet was created, was finished being kind of built in 1995. Like, that was the first term of the Clinton administration.
Yeah. I remember that. I was in college. I don't know those names other than AOC, and she's way far left for me. As you say, maybe she's moderated. I would see myself going for Cox. Like now that I've seen him, like that's the centrist that I'm looking for. I have not seen a Democrat who's centrist. Buttigieg kind of comes close. He seems to have, I think also what's important for me is somebody from not the coasts who understands what living in Nebraska is like, and realizing that there's you sort of ignore the so-called flyover states at your peril. So but I don't, to the more important point, let's get away from personalities. The more important point is what you said about the price of eggs. The Democrats do not offer a vision yet for how are you going to achieve economic prosperity now. Donald Trump's answer to this was bring manufacturing back, which is bullshit. It's not going to happen. There's only 12 million, 13 million manufacturing jobs anyway. Even if you doubled it, it wouldn't make a difference. I'd make a small difference, but you're not going to double it. You're going to like increase it by 10%. Nobody's going to notice.
I actually would disagree with that. You know why I would disagree with that?
No.
Biden did double it. Manufacturing capacity in the United States doubled during the Biden administration.
Okay, I had no idea.
So you could double it, but it's not going to be
But you're making my point. But you're making my point that nobody noticed, and it doesn't matter. Like it's not. That's not the economic prosperity that we need to focus on. Like my kids are going to have a better life than me because they're in an economy that's thriving based on the 70-something% now. That's this service-based economy, which means like, how is it that you accelerate? How do you have upward mobility in that kind of economy? I don't know. I think about it. I have not figured it out yet. Probably be richer than I am today if I'd figured it out. But I think that's what the Democrats need to figure out, or anybody like a centrist Republican could figure it out. If you can express something that's not authoritarian populist BS, and articulate a vision for the country that actually gives people hope in what we are going to be over the next 50 years. Maybe we're making a similar point about like do big things, dream big, articulate a vision for our economic future that gives people upward mobility, or at least hope of upward mobility. That would resonate. But I see none of that. No, not even Buttigieg or like the leading speakers. Like what we have is a socialist, I think maybe a communist that won the Democrat nomination for mayor in New York. Like Mamdani wants to give people free. He wants to give people free groceries and bus rides, which is like, to me, I'm going to vomit. Like you might as well just take the Constitution out.
He does not want to give people free groceries. And then we give people free roads. Like, why is public infrastructure in that particular case free, but like in the form of like mass transit not free?
Well, I pay my my gas tax in California. That pays for the roads.
Okay, is it special because you're paying a gas tax that like that's for the roads? Like, are there like other like taxes that like we cannot pay for other forms of mass transit?
I'm not saying we can't. No, so the buses. Are you saying the buses or the food?
I'm saying buses. Like if one car, if one bus can replace 30 cars, like why is that not in the public interest?
The principle that we're just going to start giving shit away, and that is, to me, that's a bridge too far. I also think that Mamdani has tempered a lot of his stuff, but if you look at his early stuff, it worries me that our answer in the Democratic Party is further left instead of more center. That's my point.
And what I would say is that like you may not agree with Mamdani, but he's from a younger generation and he's addressing the people's needs. And it may not be the way that you want to do it, but at least he's trying, right? Rather than like what, frankly, because like this started with is like they don't have an alternative in the Democratic Party right now. That's this guy's trying. He's trying to do something different, and maybe you don't vote for him. He's certainly not a communist. Like, so I think like that is
when I listen to him. No.
Like like him and Vladimir Lenin would not agree on practically anything.
Okay, good. I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad. And call me wrong. I listen to what he wants to do, and I'm like, time out, bro. Like, not
he's as much a communist as like the average is in Western Europe, right? Like the things that he's advocating for are not that crazy, and like in context in countries that we consider free capitalist systems, right? So, let's just pump the brakes.
I'm not voting in New York, so it doesn't really matter. But I also think if you like, it is. My point stands that what we need is a broader vision, an alternative to the current populist, right-wing, authoritarian BS.
Yep. I think we were in agreement about that.
All right. So I did a scorecard, and if you'll humor me, I don't know if this is going to be a new section or not, but I'd like, I broke it down, and I don't know if we call it scorecard or something else, but I want to run through the list. And I feel like maybe it'll be a running tally, and please, like I did it, but you should add to it. But I want to start with the good, right? We started today, or the main topic today was this streamlined permitting, but I want to start with the good shit that's come out in this administration, and then we'll go to the bad. The good, to me, this is my list, so you don't agree with it, I know. But starts with securing the border. I've said it a bunch of times. I think Biden fucked up the border. It's part of why the pendulum swung too far back the other way. Secure the border. Great. Shaking things up at the DoD, specifically in acquisitions and organization, like getting ready for the next war, which is going to be a drone war, to your point. Like the way the DoD was organized before was antiquated tank battles and shit like that. Like, third, focus on energy dominance. Not that they've got the right policy prescriptions to actually achieve that, but I think the focus on energy dominance is right. Identifying that, like universities squashing far-right speech was not the right answer. I think just identifying that as a problem, I agree with that. I think focus on reducing crime. Again, don't agree with all of how they went about it, but fine. You want to talk about reducing crime? I think everybody would say, yes, let's reduce crime. I also can get on board with the, questioning the CDC and whether or not just we can do anything different from a health and human services perspective. I think you got to follow the science, but at the same time, questioning the experts, no problem. Emphasis on winning at AI, totally good to go. I think, and then finally the economic rollbacks. This is new this week for me. This is my scorecard. I'm adding to the list here, this regulatory rollbacks for permitting easier. I'm on board. Now, my bad list, trying to end birthright citizenship, total bullshit, and not constitutional. Pardoning insurrectionists, awful. The J6ers should all be in jail. Firing inspectors generals, these are the government watchdogs that actually prevent bad shit from happening behind the scenes in the government. Fired all of those on day one, awful. Mobilizing the military in U.S. cities. My old unit, 7th Marines, is in L.A., awful. Military on U.S. streets. Reference my comments about Charlie Kirk, not what we want. Using tariffs for personal leverage. This is just Trump centralizing power in the presidency, giving away certain things to certain countries that he wants favor from and not others. Withholding funding. I'm okay questioning the environment on the universities, but withholding cancer research funding from universities as a point of leverage, totally awful. Kneecapping two of the fastest growing low cost forms of energy, awful. Vengeance on opponents like John Bolton or Kamala Harris, just using the public office to go after your enemies, terrible, authoritarian. Dismantling USAID, which was a pittance, but made us a lot more safe, totally wrongheaded. Intimidation of the media, of law firms winning lawsuits that are total bullshit in the first place. Masked men leading ICE raids to go round up grandma instead of, go get the criminals off the street. Obama did more of that than even Trump has, but leave grandma alone. And then the self-dealing BS that the crypto, the personal bribes. And now new is now censoring critics. They want, getting Kimmel, is the jawboning that got Kimmel removed or indefinitely suspended, calling bad jokes, hate speech, give me a break. And ignoring science. I'll go back to the CDC. I'm fine questioning all the madness, questioning the CDC, but let's follow the science, please. Sorry. That's my list.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty good list. I think you were, in my opinion, being exceptionally conciliatory in the good list. There was some things there that I think were, you were giving more credit than is due.
Ooh, what? Tell me.
Focusing on the energy dominance. There's what he says versus what he does. And so you can say energy dominance, but if you're canceling, huge offshore wind turbines, you're just not. It's, again, don't tell me what you believe. Tell me what show me what you're doing. Maybe I'm a Missouri guy, show me state kind of guy here, but
Hey, I was actually born
I don't
in
think
Missouri.
that's yeah. Okay. Well, then, yeah, you should be a show me kind of guy too, right?
Show me. Yeah, that's right.
I think that there's, the universities had gone too far. I think that's maybe painting with a pretty broad brush there. There was definitely, maybe they were accepting of a few things too much, but also one of the things that, I've identified or is coming out right now is that I think it was the head of Texas A&M just resigned. And that's because he, is resigning. There has been 3 people that have resigned as a result or have been forced out. And it was because the professor said something, a student questioned it as being illegal in Texas to be taught as far as gender ideology. The professor got fired, then the thing. So if we're talking about censoring free speech, that's the government immediately kind of reaching into this and preventing somebody to, associated with that. So there's that, and then I think you give him too much credit on the emphasis on tech and winning AI. I think there's an important point here about like if we want to win the race in AI and specifically as how it applies to national security, it needs to be kind of an industry that's regulated to a certain extent because it's in the U.S.'s best interest to maintain kind of a certain degree of dominance on that. And right now, it seems like the Wild West. And so, there's definitely a role here about like you want to be careful about overregulation because if you put too much of a throttle on it, then you're allowing others to kind of get in there. But we're definitely ahead on this one. And so I think there's a nuance and a balance about how to do that. Mostly what I've been seeing is kind of an unleashing of crypto. And I haven't seen, I personally see very little practical application for crypto. And other than specifically to put money into the president's pocket in a very upfront and legal bribe, apparently. So,
yeah, totally.
So I'm a little skeptical about that.
Yeah. I think, look, I think each of these we could have a long conversation about. I take your points. I think maybe we postpone the debate because we see those things differently. But hey, man, let's just disagree vehemently.
Yeah. I mean, there's that. So let's, I'll have to maybe put together my own list and I'll think about that and maybe we can talk about that next time.
All right. Sounds good.
So with that in mind, what, good, bads and others, we're to that part of the show. What's good for you, man?
I am super happy that Trump is not sending troops to Chicago. For fuck's sake. I was just really, that it was going to be worse than LA. It was going to be continuation of his DC policy. I hate seeing U.S. troops on U.S. streets. It's just not the right answer, and they're not going. And I don't even know why. I don't know all the reasons why. I think it's mostly to do with that he didn't get invited, which is another good sign that he didn't get invited, and therefore he didn't just blatantly break the law, which gives me some hope. Because so much of what he does, like part of what goes through my head is like, just like he's doing that because he's just not expecting to leave power in 2028. Like, I understand, like from my very, MAGA friends, they're like, nah, he's just exercising the, power of the office. And sometimes I can see that perspective. Sometimes I can see it as like, I put my positive pants on. I'm like, okay, I get it. He's just doing what he, what he can now, exercising his power. But then I put my negative pants on. I was like, no, he's only doing that because he doesn't give a shit about the elections. Like if you look at that list that we just went through, like a lot of that stuff people don't like, but he doesn't care because, again, with my negative pants on, I'm like, he doesn't care because he's not going to go through another election. He's just going to stay in power.
To illustrate our earlier point there is like, you got to give JB Pritzker a little bit of credit here, right? Which is he stood up and said, get the hell out of here. You're not coming here. Like, I don't want you. You're not welcome. It's illegal, by the way. Like, beat it. And so just having a little bit of a backbone and standing up to a bully is important. And so maybe JB Pritzker is a Democrat that you can get behind, Neal.
Maybe. Actually, good point. I have not listened to too much of him. But good. He stood up. He did okay, good to go. All right. My bad is I read and listened to a bunch of stuff about the shadow docket, the Supreme Court shadow docket, which I had never heard of before.
Yeah.
Sparsely
really?
used.
Yeah, it's awful. It used to be sparsely used, but it's not so sparsely now.
That's what I mean. Is like we'd never heard of it because it was basically never a couple times, but like sparsely. But it's been used 28 times, which I think don't quote me on this, but I think that's more than it's ever been used. Like in the last 20 years or something. Not ever. I think it's been used about 100 times in the history of America, but maybe in the last 20 years it was used 15 times, and now it's been used 28 times in the last 6 months. Something like that. Just a lot. And it's just clearly bad because the Supreme Court is just giving the administration what they want and not explaining it. There's usually when you get a Supreme Court decision, you get a pages and pages of explanation and like dissenting opinions, and like the lower courts know how to interpret it. Because the Supreme Court is supposed to be there to weigh in on gray area. And none of that's happening. It's just a decision.
Yeah, and those
And it's
opinions, like just to anchor on that for a second, are super important because like it's how history actually comes back and reads and understands like what the opinions were that created this from a legal perspective. Helps to illustrate where things are wrong. It helps to educate lower courts to be able to try to make decisions that are in line with the thinking of the Supreme Court justices on this and the majority opinion. Like this, like these are really important things. And by the time it gets to the Supreme Court, it all deserves an opinion. But I interrupted because you were about to tell about how they don't really do this now.
they don't like. It was just like the example that got my attention was that I was so certain that the ICE agents were racially profiling, which is clearly not. I mean, I'm not a constitutional scholar, but from my reading of the Constitution, like you can't. Like it's not. That's not how. That's not our ethos in America. That we don't racially profile. And in fact, one of the regional judge, the circuit court judge, said it was not legal. He basically said, "Yeah, no, you can't do that." And the
Some
Supreme
reasonable
Court,
search and seizure under the Fourth Amendment.
yeah, and then which seemed like the right answer. You're like, "Yeah, you can't do that." And then the lower court said, "Yeah, no, you can't do that," and the Supreme Court overturned it. And I was just so shocked. So I wanted to go learn more. And you get to this like dead end of just a shadow docket that says, we're not explaining it. It's just, here's the answer. And you can, in fact, do these, basically racial profiling. Like, and I should say, as a former practitioner of this, looking for bad guys in Iraq, it's really hard to do your job if you can't racially profile. You're looking for a sort of like, we always used to call MAMs, middle-aged man, M-A-M, middle-aged man.
Military age man.
Sorry, thank you, middle-aged. I'm old and I can't remember anything. Military age
looking
man.
for those 40-year-olds.
Yes. But yeah, you're looking for a certain profile. And I get it. If you're an ICE agent, you want to do your job. You're like, of course I have to racially profile. Why would I just go to Home Depot? The reason is constitutionality. But again, I went looking and then I got to a dead end because the Supreme Court didn't explain anything.
Do you think it's arrogance or cowardice? Like why do they are like, I don't have to tell you, like I'm not going to explain my opinion? Or do you think it's like a cowardice of they know like what they're doing is morally and reprehensible, constitutionally dubious at best, and so they just punted on it so they don't have to take the heat? Like what? Like do you think it's more of a question of cowardice or of arrogance?
I don't know.
Or
in part because they haven't
because
explained.
it doesn't seem. Yeah, go ahead.
No, they also haven't explained why they're using the shadow docket. Right? You would think that they would present some rationale, at least not that I could see. Again, somebody please point me to this if I'm just missing it. But I didn't find any, like Roberts wrote some like white paper that said, here's how we're going to use the shadow docket and here's why we have to move quickly. We have to blah, blah, blah. I don't know how to answer your question. It's my bad this week because I just think it's bad.
Yeah. Worth pointing out now that the Supreme Court says that you can't use race for admissions into a college, but you sure as hell can for kidnapping a grandma.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And my other this week is Lisa Cook. She's the on the Fed Board of Governors. Look, again, sign. I mean, the sign the apocalypse is upon us kind of moment here, where like I've dug into this, and you look at like the reason she could be removed is quote unquote for cause, which is not precisely defined, but it usually means misconduct, neglect of duty, or an inability to perform your role. It looks like she didn't do the thing that they're accusing her of anyway. But let's set that aside. Even if she did do it, it would have nothing to do with her job. It's just a charge that might conveniently be used against her so Trump can get his way and exercise more power. So I'm looking at this because I think he just asked yesterday for the Supreme Court to weigh in. They probably will use the shadow docket. And again, you're like, just a pretty obvious right answer here. I don't know what they're going to do, but I'm going to keep watching.
Yeah. One of the things, eventually, if the emperor doesn't have any clothes, people start figuring out that the guy's running around naked, right? And so one of the ways that the emperor prevents running into those sort of scenarios is by having smart people like Lisa Cook that are in there to help make sure that you're doing what's kind of in the best interest of the country. Foolishly, for Trump, he is removing the people that are doing that because he's putting in the people that are most willing to participate in those absurdities that are his cabinet meetings right now, where everybody is just publicly filleting him. It's the most disgusting displays of obsequiousness I've ever seen. He's putting people like that in, and what's bad for the country is also going to be bad for him politically. And so eventually the wheels come off the bus. So that's kind of feels like what we're setting ourselves up for here. For me, the good was I had a good sales trip. It's nice being around like this conference I was at. It's the promotional products industry. They're just full of actually really nice people that care about things. Again, people I didn't necessarily agree with politically or did agree with politically, but they were all just open. I had a really nice conversation with a guy named Jerry from South Dakota. His daughter's in the rodeo, and she's been running, barrel racing for 15 years. She apparently comes here to Denver for the National Western Stock Show every year, so like I'm going to make a point to go see her. I'm guarantee you, Jerry and I voted for different people. Actually, I can't guarantee it, but like, because we didn't talk about politics. But, there's a pretty good chance based upon demographics and kind of like what he cares about, what I care about. We didn't vote for the same people, but man, it was just nice to be around, just good people. So I had that. I think there's some sales coming out of it as well. And then the other thing that was really, really super cool about this was the director of sustainability for this conference, a gal named Elizabeth Wimbush. She landed Dr. Jonathan Foley, who is the director of Project Drawdown, and I think probably the clearest thinker on climate out there. She landed him as the keynote speaker for this conference. And it was great. Dudes, I really, really value, what he's talking about. And so I ended up writing an article about that. So if you're interested, you can go to my Substack post on my letters called The Climate Dad. So you can find it there. But so it was just fun. I got a chance to actually meet somebody that I really, really admire and who is willing to kind of step past partisan sort of stuff just to get shit done. And I've always admired that about both Project Drawdown and Dr. Foley himself specifically.
Yeah, I agree. He's like Project Drawdown is a go-to for rational data explanations. If you're an impact junkie, you want to do stuff that matters and is based on proper research, science, etc. That's like the go-to place.
Yeah. It's good stuff. He's got a big announcement that's coming out next week in New York Climate Week. I won't steal his thunder because I'm not sure. This is coming out right in the middle of Climate Week. So I'm not sure whether he's announced it at the front end or the back end. So we'll talk about it another time. For my bads, leaning into the free speech thing here. So the firing of Jimmy Kimmel, we've already talked about, the head of Texas A&M. I want to point out that it's corporations, companies have the ability to hire and fire whoever they want, right? And if it no longer, aligns with their business direction or their interests, like, okay, that's how the free market works, and I'm okay with that. But there's something different about Jimmy Kimmel. There's something different about like what's happening at Texas A&M here, which is that it's actually the government that's doing this, and that is a blatant First Amendment violation. And to your earlier point, I worry about the Supreme Court even being able to rule on that in a public way that says like that's either very right and we've now completely kind of overturned everybody's understanding of the First Amendment, but more likely they're just going to hide from it. And so, this really, really worries me. I had a friend who he's good friends with Republicans. He's a little bit left of center, but he's a pretty moderate guy. He's, I know he's switched back and forth in political, and like, he called me freaked the fuck out. Like, hey, should I be leaving this country? Was kind of what his conversation was. And I was just like, what? And it was over Jimmy Kimmel. And like, don't get me wrong. I have no love for Jimmy Kimmel. Like he's not. I've never really like sat down and watched his show. I don't think he's all that funny. Back up when he was doing the Man Show, like it's kind of weird that like he's this paragon of the left since he was like a pretty anti-feminist. Did a blackface thing on the Man Show. Like, he's not like he's not some paragon of virtue that like I want to rally around here. But the problem is the same thing that we were kind of talking about with the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Just because he's an asshole doesn't mean he deserves to get shot. In the case of Jimmy Kimmel, just because he's saying things that you don't agree with doesn't mean that the government has the right to come in and to pressure that corporation that's in the process of like some sensitive like business sort of things to say you got to get rid of this guy because he said something unnice about our boss. That's a big fucking problem.
Yeah. Well, remember, so last week you wanted the lieutenant in the National Guard to like grow a pair and stand up and say, no, I'm not going to follow that order.
Yep.
I was skeptical of that, but I am like, I will triple down on this. These executives who are worth billions of dollars themselves should grow a pair. Like ABC capitulated, CBS capitulated. Now Disney Plus, it's temporary, but it looks like Disney Plus. I say Disney, ABC, it's all the same company.
It's all like they've just,
and like, holy shit, man, grow a pair. I don't get it. This is where, I know you've got to like make a decision in the interest of your shareholders, but also show some freaking leadership, man. Like this is not going to stop. Like that interchange he had with Jonathan Karl. Like, oh, your company paid me $16 million, right? I don't know if you saw that clip. It's just a slide. It's a democratic slide that will just get worse and worse.
Yeah, 100%. So this is the government pressuring and canceling people through politics. It is, as far as I understand, is a blatant violation of what's written in the First Amendment. Not as doing that. So we're going to kind of see where that goes. At the same time, it's worth pointing out that those that have kind of been arguing against cancel culture are not standing up for this. The people that like have been screaming about how important it is that universities allow conservatives to do their thing. And so you really kind of like questions like, was it really about like some sort of ideal, or were you guys actually just clamoring for power here? And right now I'm not seeing a whole lot of people standing up and like actually like being like, you know what, actually it was about this ideal for me and I care about this and like I'm going to defend this.
There are some. Ted Cruz has said a few things like to push back on Pam Bondi, for example.
Cool.
But you're right.
Show me.
Yeah,
I mean, like, actually, don't tell me what you believe. Show me.
Yeah, I'm with you. I just want to acknowledge that there have been a few Republicans who've actually, on principle, pushed back, but not nearly enough. You're right.
Yeah. Ted Cruz, by the way, you're a Texas state, senator for the state of Texas here. Like Texas A&M is all your constituents. You could be standing up here for the fact that the government is using power to stifle speech.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Ted Cruz is not the model of backbone.
He's not like, the champion we're looking for.
He's probably not. But I will give him credit. Like again, credit where credit's due. Right? He pushed back. He I think Pam Bondi went too far. He said something. She walked some stuff back, and the news I got was that she walked it back in part because of what folks like Ted Cruz had said.
All right, fair enough. The other thing that I worry about here is the fact that like you have like Brian Kilmeade, on Fox and Friends that said not just once but twice on the same show about like it would probably just be better if for homeless people that aren't interested in accepting help and getting off the streets that if we just use lethal injections to kill them. And it took a couple of days, and then he kind of did a half apology, and he still gets to keep his job. And so it's also worth kind of like this juxtaposition. If we're really going to scream about like public norms and decency, like and about like political violence, continuing in the vein of Charlie Kirk here, like this guy needs to be out of a job. Like that's not. It's it's not just a bridge too far. It's a fucking like a spaceship too far. Like he took a rocket to a fucking another planet too far. So but nobody like that's lost in the shuffle.
Yeah, yeah. I hope we don't. I hope what ends up happening here is we just get back to our roots. That that the answer to free speech or speech like that we don't agree with was just more speech. But that's not, I mean, clearly what's being exposed here is kind of what Kimmel said, which is that this is being used as a political weapon. They're using it. I mean, this is instead of just standing up for the principle, being Americans first, they're trying to score points.
Yep. And then my last thing here is I'm just kind of seeing what shakes out from Charlie Kirk here. This has really resonated with my conservative friends in a way that kind of was unexpected for me. I'm kind of surprised about how much people really identified with him, and then like how quick they're willing to ignore, frankly, even his own words. And so, I've had a couple, like, I had people reach out, like when I posted, I said like, "Hey, you want to be against political violence? Me too. I've been against it for a while. But let's also not pretend like that this guy didn't laugh at like the person that attacked Paul Pelosi with a hammer, right?" And they're like, "Why would you do that? Are you justifying him being killed?" Like, no, you have to use the first part of my words which is what I said, which is nobody deserves to die for speech. Right? Like they shouldn't have to be, they shouldn't be afraid for their life, even if they say something pretty awful. But let's also not paint them as like some sort of hero. And so anyways, it was interesting to me about like how quick and visceral that reaction was from people that like I don't necessarily hear from. And the part that worries me about that, and this is why it's an other, because I want to track it, is like, what are the things that they're going to justify as being okay because they feel like this deep personal connection to this guy that was frankly not reflective of the values that I thought that they had, and so there's like this component of ideology here and identity that like I'm worried about like where this goes. And we're seeing some of the early stuff of that with Jimmy Kimmel, for example.
So should the flags have been half staff?
No. I don't think so. I wouldn't have minded it if Governor Spencer Cox was running it, right? Like if Governor Spencer Cox was President Cox and he said like this was a political assassination, we need to tone this down in the United States. Okay. The idea of like, okay, we should mourn that. I might have been okay with that. Presidential Medal of Freedom, no, but like whatever. But I also think that Governor Cox would have been like, for Speaker Hortman, the woman that was and her husband that were assassinated in, what was that, Wisconsin? No, excuse me, Minnesota. That was, that were assassinated in Minnesota in June. Like, I think he would put the flags down for them too, right? Like in this idea of like trying to tune it down, right? But the only thing that like Trump and all of his cronies did was make fun of Governor Tim Walz in Minnesota and ignore the fact that like there was a political assassination that happened of those two people and a near assassination for two other people at the same time. Like if we're so like I would be okay. Like the reason you put the flags down at half staff is in order to make a signal to the country about something that's important. And so I could understand that explanation if it was coming from a guy like Spencer Cox. And if it had had some sort of history where he was trying to tone things down and was trying to like bring the country together. But in this, it seemed like they were using the flag to divide rather than to unite. And that is my problem. Like the flag is supposed to unite, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, I don't know. My immediate reaction was, "What the fuck?" To be blunt, because to me, flag is for the flag being lowered is for national tragedies. This was personal tragedy. Certainly, it was a political party tragedy, a movement tragedy. I don't know if it's a national tragedy. Um, Probably not for 50% of the country or 49% or whatever. And I feel like it, to me, was like, well, like if you want to, if a warrior overseas dies and you want to lower the flag for that warrior, yeah, fuck yeah. Charlie Kirk represented a lot of stuff to a lot of different people. For some of the country, it was really good. For some of the country, it was really bad. I think to your point about unifying, it sort of probably did the opposite of that. But also what it made me realize is that their take America back, make America great again. I say they because that's a they. There's a
You're not a
section of the
Trumper.
country I am not, obviously. They're trying to make that flag mean something else. They're trying to make the flag mean something that it does not mean to me. And I've had a lot of people, you actually alluded to it earlier in the show, it's like, we should just get the fuck out of here. I've had dozens of people say, I'm just going to leave. My response is always the same. Like, I'm going to stay and fight.
This is my
I'm going to
country. This
is that's exactly. And so I don't know that he was right or wrong to lower the flag. I can just give you my visceral reaction to it. And it's tied to this. I'm going to fight for the Constitution. That's what I signed up to fight for in the first place. That's what I'm going to keep fighting for. Free speech, right to practice religion you want to practice without encumbrance from the government. The right to walk down the street. It's my fucking street. The government can't stop me from walking down it. They don't have the right to ask for my ID.
Not even if
I'm brown.
Not even if you have an accent.
Nope.
Those. So that's my other man. Like I want to see how this shakes out. It makes me nervous. I'm also slightly hopeful, almost optimistic that like it shakes people like to kind of like break out of like what is going on here, because like I think the people that like have voted for this for a long time, like I think something needs to shake them awake a little bit. And not that I would wish death on Charlie Kirk or have. I'll say publicly here, I prayed for him. I prayed for him and his family the day he was killed. I hope his soul finds peace. I hope his family finds peace with that. So like, I don't wish that death upon him by any stretch, and I really did pray for him. But I would also hope that if there is something that's good to come out of this, is that it awakes people up to being like, this path that we are going down is not good. And it's only going to lead to more violence and more hate. And we need to figure out something to stop that. And it won't come from, it's going to have to come from people that have previously been on the sidelines. So, well, I think that's all the time that we've got for today. So that's it for this episode of Hardpoints. Thanks for listening and for being part of the conversation about energy, national security, startup world, and Charlie Kirk. If you found today's episode useful or thought-provoking, please share us or follow us or wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, if you're feeling generous, sharing that on social media or sending it to somebody else, we'd really appreciate that. Once again, thanks again for joining us. The show is produced by Jordan Caruso and brought to you by the Valor Media Network. See you next week.